feel like we need some like, if there's like I think there's a Seven Dust song called like Prodigal Son. Like we need something like to like, that we're back now type of, or just Thin Lizzy. We just opened this one with Thin Lizzy. And
Or like the Stone Cold music, whenever he comes back after like a WrestleMania.
or that the
but
big gong when the Undertaker comes in.
yeah, exactly.
Too funny. Well, we are back. We're Brandon's on the road as per usual, and we needed to record. We haven't recorded for a while, and we've got a lot of things we're excited about doing that kind of in both of us the last month, I would say, kind of reignited a lot in us with PLM stuff specifically. So there's a lot of things. I mean, like we're both kind of people who have a million things we want to do, and we both need like that. We need each other for like, okay, here's the laser focus on these first few things type of thing. Otherwise, nothing gets done because we have so much we want to do. But getting the recording in this week was like, that was number one. Like, let's just get back on and record some stuff and get it back kicked off again. So we are back at it, my man.
Well, and like you said, it's not for a lack of ideas or want, but we talked about a little bit a week or so ago, really rejuvenating the drive for all of this. And it's a perplexing thing without context. And I'm glad we're doing it on the podcast, because if you make a post and say, hey, we're going all small business, we're going all small artists or small craftsmen, it sends the wrong message. It's not that we aren't greatly supported or appreciative of the support of like a Montana Knife Company or something like that.
Yeah.
But, in conjunction with the friendships and affiliations that we have with those companies, I think it's both of our desire to get back and highlight a guy like Michael Vasquez, somebody who really introduced me to the love of knife making and what that could be as a collector, and then has also supported us on Peace, Love, and Meat. I mean, he's just been a through and through good guy. And I think, Matthew Morris is another one, bow maker, and just thinking about guys like him that are doing really, really cool stuff. And not to take away from the companies that want to work with us, but it's like, man, we want to show these guys some love too. So some of that, as well as just sharing music and stuff like that, we've talked about. We're both into that natural sharing. Like if you're reading a book, share it. If you're listening to a song, share it. And it's just that kind of stuff we both talked about through really the last 4 years of the pandemic. Man, I personally struggled, getting messages from people that were telling me the truth, telling me they were struggling, telling me they weren't doing their best, and then getting on here and like almost berating people for not being able to do better than they are. And I just kind of think through the last year, especially with the election and everything, I just didn't know where I fit in with that, and we talked about that throughout, trying to figure out what to share and what was honest and organic. And I think we have a good vision for that. We're still kind of tightening the screws down to get a flow. But what we've talked about doing is kind of breaking the year up into quarters and having some kind of like quarterly vision that we, it's involved with training, maybe it's involved with an idea or a book or whatever, but building these things out so that if you start at day one or you start at week 3, you can easily shuffle back and find a congruency with what we're doing and not just haphazard posting. So definitely going to get the training back up. I've been working on some stuff there myself, 10, 12-week program with different specific goals, and I think we talked to a different audience. 15 years ago, I was talking to 20 and 30-year-olds, and now I feel like we're talking to late 30, 40, 50-year-olds and beyond even. And that looks different from a training perspective. My training looks different. My diet looks different. My view of the world looks different. So I think it's important for us to kind of stay in that lane. And, one of the things that I don't want to do is like, what would please X? It should really come down to what are we doing? How can we tell that? How can we share that in a way that's, not absent of leadership, but also not standing on top of the mountain telling people how to live their lives. Like that's my ultimate goal with this,
Well, and part of it too, even going back to like when you had originally started the page, like, a handful of years ago, I mean, one of the main, and we've talked about this too, and you just kind of alluded to it, but like one of the main reasons for that was to highlight a lot of the kind of the underknown or underserved community and people that like we have become either friends with or use their stuff or like just want to tell their stories. Things that like, especially like when it comes to the outdoors world and the hunting world, like there's so many people that are kind of like the mainstream type people that everybody knows, everybody's there on every podcast. They're like kind of the big names, right? Just like there's in any, industry or whatever. But then there's like
Yeah.
the people that especially we got more plugged into on the traditional archery side of the world, that open the doors to a lot more people that are kind of like more just small community, real niche down type, that are just awesome people, like making awesome stuff or doing really
Yeah.
cool things. And it's just like, we want to tell those stories more
Yeah.
than just do the same stuff that everybody else is doing. And part of it is like, that's because that's what we like, so
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when you said, like, we're not doing this to please somebody else, like we're doing these kinds of things because like this is what we find interesting. And if like,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people that listen to this and message us all the time that like share a lot of those same interests and values and all that kind of stuff. And so like usually that's a good metric for, if we find it interesting, usually somebody else will, right? But
Yeah.
it's not even for necessarily like it is, but it isn't at the same time. Like we're doing this for people. Like we're doing a lot of this stuff because like we just think it's awesome and we want to talk to
Yeah.
these people. We want to highlight these things and just share stories and stuff like that too. So there'll be a lot more like getting like the one that I've probably gotten the most messages on as far as like feedback from a show that we did, like both when he did my show and when he did ours, was like the episodes with Cody, like guys like
Yeah.
him who just have like
Yeah.
such a really unique way of thinking about something that we all do, and has like kind of this, his family has been involved in this world for decades with like Lone Wolf and all this kind of stuff. And they've sort of built this system, this protocol, the way he hunts, like even just his connection to the outdoors, all the stories that he tells, like it's that kind of stuff that we find super interesting. And so
Yeah.
it's getting around people like that to build essentially a tighter knit community around all these things that we like and enjoy doing and do every day.
Yeah. Well, and it's really just kind of, somewhat reporting on those things because, man, as you and I know, like you can have a great, let's say on a page like this, you can have a great following, very engaged, very interactive, but man, it is always keeping up with the Joneses as far as like being seen and being relevant by the
Yeah.
algorithm standard. And
Yeah.
I think what I enjoyed about Peace, Love, and Meat early on was that it seemed to get through.
Yeah.
Like no matter if the algorithm was against me or for me or whatever, it just seemed like the right people kept finding and kept showing up. And that's really what I want to get back to is just,
Yep.
man, there's so many awesome people out there. And dude, like I get it. The options are limitless with the internet these days, and the money that can be made is exorbitant. But I watch these people who are telling you to live a genuine life or to do things a certain way. And man, their whole entire life is structured around this storytelling, really.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not how I want to do it. I don't want to, yes, I would like to have, hey, for the next 12 weeks, we're going to focus on this stuff because it's important and it's relevant for us to fix or to address or to work on. But again, I don't think that you have to find the thing that you're signing up 75 people to your group for that, where you
Yeah.
can just share what you're doing, actually do it yourself, lead
Yeah.
from the front, work on these things, share these things, talk about these things, and other people will either see that, man, I need to do the same thing, or I can apply those lessons too. And that's where it gets better because then it becomes cross informational. People start sharing stuff back and forth. Look at this guy, look
Yeah.
what he's doing. Oh, this guy talked about this. And you just keep finding new people and being
Yep.
able to share that too. So that's the way we've envisioned it. That's the way we've talked about, and that's the way we're going to do it. It's just really getting the parameters down to do it, but we are
Yeah.
doing it.
100%.
So,
And because of the season we're coming into right now, usually it's like obviously fall is hunt season, right? But there's a lot of stuff that's coming up here in the next couple months as we get into spring stuff like turkey and like spring bear and all those other kinds of things that are going on. I know we've talked about maybe getting in a bear hunt sometime this week, but do you have anything that you've got? Are you going to get in on turkey at all this month
yeah,
or anything like that?
yeah, definitely would love to get in on turkey. Still a part of me, one, because I've seen them on the public land, and two, because a guy that I've kind of gotten to know, hunt with Liz and him out there in the same kind of area. He said that there's a couple spots we're near that have good turkeys on them. So I
Yeah.
think that's one option. There's a couple other guys that have kind of extended an offer, but I haven't, really tied down anything. So yeah, I'd say we'll end up hunting turkey somewhere. Uh, Obviously talk to you about black bear out there in Idaho, see what might
Hmm.
be able to put together for that. But otherwise, man, loving to get in on some hogs. This is a
Yeah.
great time of year to hunt them because it's not so hot.
Yep.
Uh, they're moving around a lot, but they're not just like bedding up. They're on their feet a little more because it's pleasant, and then that makes it pleasant hunting too. Um, yeah, man, dude, any chance I can get in the woods, I'm gonna take it. So,
What's
what
the
about you?
how is that hog population like in that spot? I mean, is it still just ridiculous?
So, truth be told, yes. The answer is yes. But the spot that I was hunting pretty heavily for hogs dissipated somewhat. I don't know if there was another guy that came in on a lease adjacent, and I think he was feeding it pretty hard and whatnot.
Gotcha.
I don't know if he drew them over there because, I mean, listen, you're 40, 50 yards difference,
Yeah.
So for something that's looking for consistent food and it's there all the time, I mean, that's an easy draw. It's not seeing the numbers that were there before, but definitely I think the total population is there. It just might be moved off a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've got a couple opportunities. Some guys in Florida, some guys in Texas have some bigs, so there's definitely some good opportunities for that. I just got to hash them out.
Yeah.
But man, I would love to find a place that just on a whim, if I had time, yep, come down hunt pigs anytime. Like that would be the fun stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get there's a really good spot. It's about 40 minutes away on the Weezer River from where I am. And but my uncle and another family friend of ours, that's kind of like where they go a lot for turkeys, and he got on them last year and had a really awesome tom that he ended up getting last year for his first one, which was pretty
Yeah,
awesome. And they do like they have to take in a boat and go in from a boat to get like to the areas where they get off and kind of wander around in kind of this marshy area.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's killer. There's like so many back there because obviously like there's some of those places you can't even get to unless you get to them from the water. And where
Right.
like once more water flow kind of starts coming in into those sections of the river and tributaries and stuff over the next few weeks and stuff, like it opens up a ton of
Yeah.
like pretty good opportunities. So I'm going to hopefully be able to get in towards the end of this month, I think, go up there and hopefully I'm going to go up with just I'll go up with my bow, but I'm going to take my 12 gauge too, just because
Oh, yeah.
it's fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
That's, you know, like I really enjoy the challenge of getting a bird at all. I mean, yes, I want to get it with my traditional bow just because I love that feeling, that experience. But dude, if there was ever a bird made for a shotgun, it was a turkey. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it was like turkey hunting is the best when you're just based at a tree,
Yep.
barrel sitting over your knee, and you're just watching them walk in. I mean, few things are more immediately, like the deal is done.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
But yeah, I've heard Idaho's got pretty good turkey hunting because not a lot of guys get into it out there.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of strange. Like it is one of those ones that I mean, well, it's funny because like the it's the same thing with every animal out here. Like the hunters will tell you like there's not hardly any anymore compared to what they
Yeah,
were like 25 years ago or something like that. I mean, that's the case with everything out here. Everybody says like, oh, you should have been here in 97 when the elk were just, you could have seen them everywhere type of thing. I mean, like they're all still there. But like
right.
with turkey, there is, I think, just generally a little bit less hunting pressure in these spring seasons like this,
Yeah,
which is good, but obviously there's a lot less. I mean, not even less habitat, I would say, but it's just like it's the Western version of turkey hunting. So it's like
right.
there's just a little bit more hiking, a little bit more work involved to get to some
Yeah,
of those places. Like there would be, I mean, like I like in the southern style, kind of more like you would hunt them like whitetail essentially, right? Like you
yeah,
got your spots. There's real thick woods everywhere. You can kind of go in there and camp out for a while, and you can somewhat do that here, just depending on where you are. But it's just like there's a lot of places where it's just like you just got to walk back in there a long ways to get to where they are. And like
yeah,
most things out here, most people just don't want to walk that far. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's one of my things too. Like I have never, and again, listen, if I had Papa's farm and 500 acres that I could just free run on, I would have a different story.
Yeah.
But you know, I know guys that they are dedicated turkey hunters, but they have either a great knowledge base of the woods and woodsmanship, so they can go to some of these public places, or they've got traditional land that they can hunt year in and year out. They know that there's turkeys there. But I'll just tell you, it's a challenge for me to spend much more than a couple 3 days on a 20-pound bird. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Like I'm all about giving it a weekend, but man, some of these guys bounce 4 or 5 states and all that kind of stuff. And like I
Yep.
respect it. Like I am actually saying they do an amazing job because of how difficult it can be. But I just don't have the fever for turkey like someone that does has
Sure.
that. You know, I just it's exciting to me and it's fun, but it's more of one where you've got a short trip, you're with some good people, you're more or less going to get a bird. I mean
Yep.
that kind of thing. I don't know. I would rather put my time in the woods working for something like a deer
Yeah.
or
Totally.
something like that. You
Yeah.
know,
Totally.
but for sure, down to turkey hunt. I just want it to be a good place where it's like we're gonna have a good time. You know.
Yeah. 100%. We also did. I mean, we're releasing this episode in an extremely timely manner. This is immediately post Winterstrong. Just kidding. It's been a month. But we didn't do like a, kind of a recap or even, I mean, like we did the one before, talking about the giveaway and whatnot, because that was like, right before Winter Strong. But
Yeah.
that was a handful of weeks ago. So I just, we can kind of recap that a little bit too. But like, what was your, kind of overall feeling about just the whole weekend this year?
Well, I think for me, I'm always somewhat tainted by that question by the first year or two because
Yeah.
they were just so special and small.
Yeah.
Overall, I'm going to say this was one of my favorites. As far
Mhm.
as I really do think they've got a reduction sauce now of the right people, like the
Yeah.
right kind of people, the right
Yeah.
minded. I mean, I'm looking around and you've got just any number of attendees, either serving food or carrying trash or, everyone there is kind of in the mindset of how can I help and what can I give? And that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, I still feel like I want to see more hands-on stuff, like
Yeah.
the first couple of years. The tactile stuff where maybe you're sharpening a blade, learning how to do that, or hammering on some steel or whatever. I mean, those are personal things that I enjoyed, like the bow drill
Sure.
to start a fire.
Yep.
Like I don't think anyone's ever going to get over the magic of that first time when you get a spark and you get like that's an amazing accomplishment. So I think we have that. The breakout session seemed um, longer.
Yeah.
Like it kind of like it took up most of your morning, which
Yep.
that's a good argument too because like we went with Joe Miles and Bert, and that was great. Like getting that in depth. But I'm also the kind of person that might like to bounce around, do a few things. So perfect world, we would have those longer ones that if you walked away, there's no hard feelings, and maybe something where you could go the bow drill or learn how
Yep.
to sharpen a blade or whatever. But yeah, overall, dude, this year was such a good year from I'm picking fly shit out of chili right now. I'm saying like
Right.
everything was really, really good and organized. The competition ran a little bit long, as we
Yeah.
saw.
Quite a bit
Uh,
long.
but again, all of it in an effort to make things flow better. And I think for the most part, it was better than last year. There are just things that we could do to improve it for next year. And again, I told Bert, credit to Bert, his vision for this, and then Tyler, Ricky, Josh, those guys that are really hands on and making this thing go. Of course, they did an awesome job, but I was most proud of Bert. I think coming off the year that he had, losing
Yep.
Nelson, losing Pops, really be given full reign of like, hey, you're the man now. Like,
Yep.
it's all on you. He just said, I want it to be good, but it's going to be what it is. And I said, dude, the people that are here now, whether by your definition of good, bad, or in between, they're going to have a good time and they're going to enjoy
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Like, I don't think the kind of people that were there are wants to complain about anything. I'm sure there's somebody that's like, yeah, the competition could have been a little bit shorter or a little bit more structured or whatever. But dude, on the whole of a weekend where you're being fed great food, you're around awesome people, like pretty tough to beat weekend, really.
Yeah, I had pretty much the same thoughts, and it was really kind of like last year I think was a lot different than years previous because there was the added aspect that they started last year. We're opening it up, more
Yeah.
publicly, which I think was really good to bring in like some fresh faces just in general, right?
Yeah.
And we realized like through that process with applying and all that kind of stuff, like it didn't dilute any part of the weekend. I think
No.
because that was part of like I think the main worry for a while is just like we got the core kind of group of people and same types of people, but I think last year was really good to just kind of like I said, just kind of get some fresh faces in there, but still ones that really melded well with everybody in there and like contributed. It wasn't just like they were there lurking and hanging out. Like everybody was involved and wanting to do stuff. And that just kind of, I think, carried over into this year too. There was a couple of really cool, this year I went to that like canning and jarring session,
Yeah.
which was pretty
Yeah.
dope, honestly. Like those guys that were from Clemson, and like their ag department at Clemson came in, and it was super interesting because that's like obviously something I've been getting a lot more into. But just, I mean, the information part of the weekend is like never lacking, right? It's just like
Right.
there's always stuff you can go learn, even if you've been there and have been even to like those same types of sessions at this weekend before. Like you're gonna learn new stuff when you come back and do it again,
Yeah.
which is the cool part. And then just having like a couple of the newer ones I thought was really cool. There was some really cool people I was glad to see there this year, like James Nash showed up this year, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Like James is great. And he was another one, he had said like kind of as far as some future things, like it ended up not working out this year because he came with I think the Pecos guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were, I think, originally planning on doing like a butchering kind of seminar, and they were going to
Yeah.
bring in something, end up not working out, just transport deals and all that kind of stuff, and James was going to be the one. So he's like, dude, that's one of the things I really wanted to be able to do is like, and I'm like, dude, I've been saying that for 3 years, like having just a live butchering demo type thing would be incredible for that weekend, just
Yeah.
because of everybody that's there. Like, I mean, those types of things would be amazing, right? So there's
Yeah.
like that stuff is already, in the works and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But there was some really cool ones this year that I was pumped to see.
Yeah. Well, and one of my favorites, and actually a guy that was in attendance brought it up to me, is you got the Fish and Wildlife guys there. You got the
Yeah,
basically
those guys are
game
awesome.
wardens there. And man, what better representative of game wardens could you have than those guys? I mean, they
They're
come
great.
out, they do a great job. They show the canine, they show some of the stuff that they do and some of the ways that they try to protect the species and whatnot. But man, I think what I gained from it, and really from this conversation with this attendee, was that he said this really humanizes the game warden.
Yeah,
Like, and if you're not out there breaking the law or even stepping close to bending the rules, they should be your friend anyway.
totally.
Like as long as you're licensed, you got your tags, like you should never fear seeing the game warden.
Yeah,
And that's really just a funny obvious, but dude, you listen and like the game wardens get a pretty bad rap.
yeah,
Like they're these assholes and this, that, and the other. And it's like, I'm sure there's the Dudley Do Rights of the world out there that give you a ticket over every little thing and whatnot. I'm sure. And I'm speaking from my experience. I've got friends that I graduated high school with that went into to become game wardens and whatnot. They're the same type of guys that they
yeah,
were in high school. Like they look at the situation, kid makes a mistake, let's just say he's got a doe tag and he shoots a little button buck. Well, dad's probably not going to say anything. He's probably going to explain. Game warden shows up. That could be a problem. Not
yeah,
necessarily because it says antlerless, but still, it's
yeah,
a teaching moment,
yeah,
and that guy shows up. And I know my friends have done that. So I've never really had that kind of disdain for him that I hear revelated, by so many. But like, I think it's a good thing to have those guys there because to me, they're two of the finest people. Or really, they had three or four people there, but the two guys that I'm speaking of, Mr. Stash and
yeah.
cannot think of the other guy's name now. But anyway,
Yeah, they're
they're
great.
great and they just
And
do a really good job.
he had I was talking to him, I can't remember, I think maybe Friday night. He had and I forgot to ask him where he got it, but he had a little like device on his cup that was in the shape of a mustache. Did you see this that he had
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on top? And it literally, the whole purpose of it is to block the beverage from like getting all up in your mustache. And I'm like looking at him like, dude, I need one of these things. And he's got like just like the curl 1800s, like winds up 2 or 3 times on the ends type of
Oh yeah,
mustache. And it's awesome. And I'm like, dude, and it looked like the Sorinex logo, like on top of his, like right
yeah.
on top of his mug. And I'm like, this thing's freaking brilliant. But yeah, those guys are awesome. What did you think? I mean, we talked about like how it ran quite a bit longer this year than in years past, but just from the competition standpoint in general, what'd you think of it?
And I think it was good. Like I think the idea the idea of it, the layout of it, I think everything was good. Um, I think what we want to do is keep it extremely positive, but I think at least from the archery standpoint, rather than having the miss go get that kind of thing,
Yeah,
I think it should be you either hit it and get a point, you wound it and you get a negative, or you miss the arrow and you get a 0. Like, I think it
Yeah.
should be a little more cutthroat, at least on the archery. Um, but dude, it seems like honestly, you just had a lot of people and a lot of teams involved, and that's
Yeah.
you've got to give a respect to how many people were willing participants, to how much time it takes to run those teams through the courses.
Yep.
If we'd had 6 teams, it wouldn't even been an hour,
Yeah.
but we had
Totally.
15, 16 teams running through the woods. And
10,
that just
11
created,
people deep on each team.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So tremendous turnout for competition, which I think is what the goal is. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to really complain about, now that I even say it out loud myself. It's like, how do you condense the time when you
Yeah.
have so many people competing? So maybe there's like, they split it up a little bit and do some on Friday, some on Saturday. I
Mm.
think that could be kind of cool. Like, you have to make the cut for Saturday,
Yeah. Yeah. Or even
something
just
like
like
that.
heat, because I mean, like basically how it works is everybody starts, they're like shotgun started at all of the different
Yeah.
stations. Everybody starts at the same time. So even if it was like maybe less stations, but we just did it in a couple of heats, like these 6 teams start once they're
Yeah.
done, like on Friday or what, like Friday we have a team that go, or a heat that goes of these 6 teams. And then, like you said, that would cut down the time it would take to run through everybody, like by probably 40 or 50% at least. And then
Yeah.
you can just run that second heat right after. And then like on Saturday night would be just kind of like take the top 4 or 5 teams and run just like a final 2 event type of thing,
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking too, is like, if you just stagger started everyone 10 minutes apart,
Yeah.
and like, and if the second team, if the team behind catches, like, then they're just automatically leapfrogged. Like,
Yeah.
if you're both running to the next event and or they're even with you, they go first.
And that was one
And
of the
then,
things from the old style of it that was kind of more of that Spartan racy type of setup,
yeah,
was because like on the, as far as the shooters, because we mentioned like having some more stakes involved for the shooters, right? So like having the how it was before was like we would do like stagger start and stuff like you were laying out, and this team would go 10 minutes later, the next team would go, and they do that. But then like all the way throughout, they would have archery targets peppered throughout the whole thing. So like as you're running, like that shooter's got to be super dialed, because then actually shots start accounting for something, because now there's like a time aspect involved, which like even if we don't do the race thing where the time is the ultimate thing, where this last 2 years we've done it like basically based on points, which like I think that's fine, but having some more pressure on those shooters, because now it was just like the one archery section of the entire thing was all that they were really there for as shooters, right? Like they were still involved in the team and doing everything, but like having some more stakes involved and some more pressure to where it's like where the actual shooter matters more to the end result of the thing, like I think is kind of what would really bump that up a little bit, because the shooters are the captains, they pick the teams, but then like with this one it was there's just the one section that they're really doing their thing, right? So like,
yeah,
and even if we did it where it was like we make it a little bit more stakes within that section, but obviously I thought like the thing that worked really well previously was like making them involved a little bit more throughout the entire thing, so there actually was like pressure upon being a captain and having to shoot.
yeah. I think that's a great idea too. I mean, year one, I was the shooter, and
Ooh,
we won that year. Had to rep that a little bit, but
there you go.
that was part of it. Like, you really did have to be involved in everything as well as the shooting, and there was
Yeah.
a lot of pressure on you to perform. Yeah, and again, it's like we tried something. It was a little bit like on paper it was good, and in reality it just slowed down a little bit. But dude,
Yeah.
like I said, when you really weigh out the practicality of it, to get over 100 people, 150 people competing, really starting midday and done right at sundown, literal sundown, was
Yeah.
pretty successful.
Yeah, it was
So
super fun. And like nobody was, I mean, other than just the time part of it, like nobody was complaining about any part of the event. Like everybody still had a blast and it was super fun. It was just like, we look at it a month out or, a month later, and it's like, well, where are the things that would like be really fun still to not take away from that? Cause like everybody still had a great time and everybody was totally gassed. And like there was a couple of those events that they put into it this year that was really funny to hear everybody's like specific experience with, because there was a bunch of new things involved in the competition this year that weren't there last year. Like the one that just absolutely torched everybody was the deer drag out, right? And that one was like just absolutely torched pretty much everybody. And so you had like this sled that you had to pull certain number of distance out, like you're dragging a deer out of the woods essentially, and that just wrecked people, which was, it was fun and it was like that. But there were some people that were like, because everybody's shotgun starts, everybody's going to do that eventually, right? So like there's some people that's where they started, And so they're toast, but then you've got all afternoon to kind of get over that and get through everything else. But then there were people that were coming into that one towards the end, and it was like one of their last few stations was that deer drag station, and just absolutely torched them, which was like, those things were really good, but it was kind of funny to see how everybody just got melted by that one specifically.
Well, and it's like, I take guys like Greg Williams, for example, from Everly Stock.
Yeah.
Like, he was on the video and he dominated it, but that
Yeah.
dude's probably drug a lot of deer in his life.
Yeah.
So he knew what he was kind of getting into. I think it was kind of amazing to see some of the people that really had no frame of reference. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's one of the cool things that it did was, a lot of people think you shoot the animal, somehow the meat just magically transports to the back of your vehicle,
Yeah.
and you have meat in the fridge perfectly processed. It's like, some of those deer drags are the hardest part of the hunt.
Brutal. Yeah.
By and large. And I mean, you get down at the bottom of a 300-foot canyon, or, some of these hills out here in Kentucky or Ohio, or some of those places where they just roll down into a creek bottom. It's wet, it's marshy, it's slick, they're heavy, they're awkward. Like, it's really cool how Bert and the guys have kind of kept the evolution of how can we make this more textural to what we're actually doing. I think that's an important aspect of Winterstrong. But man, without making it 3 or 4 days, I don't know how you can really pack more into it.
Seriously.
Like I felt like this year, though, as much as I felt like it was over so fast, like it felt like as soon as it started,
quick.
it was
It did
over.
feel quick.
But I felt like there was a lot more chill time. I do have one complaint. But if you could come up with one complaint, what would it have been? What would be the one thing you would change overall? And mine might surprise you.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's like specific to the event itself, but like the one thing I was just kind of more bummed about this year than the years previous was just like there was multiple people that weren't there that usually were. So it was more of I don't even know if there would be something specific to like the structure of the event, but it was just like there was a bunch of people that were usually kind of regulars, and like people I'm always really excited to see. That there was a lot of them that weren't there this year, which was kind of a bummer.
Yeah. The trad boys were a little underrepresented this year.
Seriously, there's only like 4 or 5, like 4 of us at the most, it seemed.
Yeah. Oh, we got to give some props to Viking Coffee. They did an awesome job out there. In comparison to years past where we've run out of coffee, yeah, we had a couple delays this time too, but like they really did a phenomenal job, just the two of them keeping.
I was just gonna say,
going.
it was just the two of them, and they did awesome that whole weekend.
Yeah, and it was great coffee too. So yeah, I really like what they're about, and I like their coffee, and they've supported Sornex for a few years now, so it's really cool to see that come to fruition. Them getting to do the job, but I guess for me, man, this is a weird one. I think something is gained, but also something is lost with fewer tents and more RVs. So what I noticed, and even partook in, so and
I stayed in one this year for the first time.
Well, ended up what you would see is like smaller pods of people gravitating back to their RVs.
Yeah,
and I think that maybe somewhat lent itself to Bert's, because Bert kind of wanted it 10:30, kind of like, let's start winding this down. We're not going to do the midnight 2 o'clock in the morning thing. So maybe it was nice to have everybody kind of segue back to their RVs and still be able to have that. That's not a complaint, but there was something lost from the years where it was midnight, 1 a.m. and everybody's around the knife forging.
Yep.
Like everybody was still out there around that. So that would be only the one thing that I would be like, how do you capture that concentrated energy?
Yeah.
When everybody can have the comfort of going back to their place, they got lawn chairs, they got music, they got whatever. It's like people deserve that too. Like, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying from what I remember, those late nights, those good nights when everybody that was a little bit different.
And even last year was a lot like that. Like where there was, I mean, it was only just a year ago, but where there was still more people that had some RVs even than the years previous, right? But there was even still, and I think last year having a lot of the new people there last year for the first time kind of initiated a lot of that. But like there was tons, like the main hangout area around the bonfire and the knife forging area, like that stuff was going way later into the night last year than it was this year even. And that was, I think, even part of where, like I mentioned, the people that weren't there this year, like, I mean, Lucas and those guys did awesome over at the
Yeah.
knife forging thing that whole weekend. Like, he was always over there helping people do stuff and like doing fun little like actual blacksmithing things, not even just knife making stuff, just like doing fun little blacksmithing things, just what he said he really wanted to put a focus on. But there was, you know, a lot of those blacksmith knife making guys that weren't around this year to do some of that other stuff with them as well. Cause I remember just a couple years ago, like like you said, the forging area was like the spot. You know, they had 3 or 4 forges, and like Neil and Lucas and Josh and Brent and like all those guys were all, and Jason were all just like firing stuff up for hours, which was awesome.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think even if you went back and you were like, okay, I can craft this perfect thing, you know, and really all of the things that we've talked about that would be great to have again, even if you said, okay, we're going to cut it in half by 100 people so everything's super intimate. I think a part of you would look back and be like, man, we could have held more people. We could have done this. You know what I mean? It's like, there's just no way to make it perfect. And I think that's what's hard when you're a part of something for so long, is each one is its own.
Yeah, it really is.
You don't really can't do it service and compare it to others. And that's what I get into. I'm very nostalgic. So like, I get into like, well, man, the first one was this, or the third one was that, or the fourth one was this. Like, that's just what they were. Like, even if you went back and tried to do the same thing, it would still be different because different people would show up, you know? And for some people, it would be like, oh, this again. And for some people, it would be like, oh, this is badass. So
totally.
With all that being said, I think the overall was a tremendous win for the weekend. Like,
I agree.
Props to the Sornex media crew. Like, they were having shit out like banger reels.
It's crazy.
Like minutes after shit would happen.
It was crazy.
You know what I mean?
They turn stuff around so fast. It's just impressive.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome.
Even Brandon Arojo commented on one of them. He was like, your guys' media team is putting in work.
Yeah,
you know?
Seriously.
Like, people don't realize how hard that is.
Yeah.
You know? So, because they're taking, I mean, 18,000 photos. Like, their clickers never really stop it. So you're going through all these amazing moments trying to find the right ones. And they do such a good job of laying that stuff down so it's cohesive. Like, it blows my stupid brain.
Right.
I don't have the capacity.
Because I was going to tell you, I ended up actually getting them ordered the other day, kind of an early birthday present to me from Molly, but we got those tickets to that Outlaw Fest that's happening in May. Yeah. And that's the one it's crazy. Like I for what the price was on them specifically, and it's, I guess part of it because it's only a 1-day thing, but I've told you, like, the last like 3 or 4 weeks, I am in such a Billy Strings like vortex, dude. I literally just can't get enough. And so he's one of the 3 headliners on there. It's him and Willie and Bob Dylan are like the 3 main headliners for this thing. And then and I'm like, and the tickets were $75 for this thing, which was just crazy. And then I was really excited because Turnpike is going to be there too. And then Red Clay Strays was the other one that I was super pumped about, because they're actually coming back later in the summer, but they're going to be there at this festival in May. But I was like, dude, this is like a banger lineup for $75 for 1 day. I was pretty pumped about it.
Yeah. Well, when's your birthday?
April 9.
Okay. I'm March 14th. So I'm coming up.
You're here in a couple days.
Liz already got kind of a start on that. Got tickets to David Tell. Saw him the other night.
Nice.
So, one of the funniest sets I've ever seen. Like,
nice.
Truly just on fire. It looked like he was having fun. You know, a lot of crowd work, a lot of shit talk back and forth. Fantastic. Going to see Tim Dillon Thursday. Nice. And then got some other stuff rolling out. But yeah, man, like, music-wise, only thing really on the horizon for me is I got Cody Jenks tickets.
Nice.
This fall. Saw him in Lexington at Manchester Music Hall. I was standing outside of his tour bus. This was at the time where I was hitting a lot of different gigs with different guys. I was kind of circuiting with Tyler and those guys some, and just bouncing around to a bunch of different concerts. But I was talking to one of the guys that works security at the Manchester Music Hall, and something hit my head. It was a fucking cigarette ash. And I looked up, and it was Cody Jenks, like, ashing out of his tour bus window. Well, he was cool about it. Like, he was super apologetic. Like, come on the bus, whatever, hang out, do that kind of thing. stayed in touch with him loosely over the years. But yeah, man, it'll be good to see him. He's kind of a guy that's done it his own way in
Yeah.
modern time. So yeah, I don't know. I saw Billy Strings years ago when he was still kind of in that Eastern Kentucky,
Yeah.
Appalachian area stuff. There's a place called the B Club, and then Kicking at the Creek and those kind of spots where Tyler got his name, kind of built himself to those little bars and stuff. But yeah, the last 4 or 5 years, I mean, it's like he's really become recognized as like he's one of those generational dudes.
And just from an ability, technical ability standpoint, like he is straight up maestro on the guitar, man. Like it's unbelievable. And it's like, and I realize that him and I are the same age. Like there's only a couple months between us. And so that was like one of those, what the hell am I doing with my guitar playing type of realizations when I did that, like I'm at like, dude, come on. But he did a really cool, I don't know if you saw it. There's this guy that has this really awesome YouTube channel. His name is Rick Beato, and he does he has a really cool show that he does, and he interviews a lot of artists and all that kind of stuff. And he has this really sweet like recording studio that he brings them into the recording studio, and usually he'll have like them bring their instruments, so they'll like lick along as they're playing and talking through their stories and stuff like that. Like he did one with Danny Carey from Tool a couple months ago that was just insane, like the stories that Danny would tell about how the Tool put stuff together. But he did one with Billy a couple of weeks ago, and it's already like I think one of the top 2 or 3 like most downloaded ones he's ever done. And he's just like the most normal dude ever. Like when he's telling his stories, and it's really cool to hear him talk about just how he grew up, basically started picking when he was like 5 or 6 years old, and his dad and his dad's buddy would be out in the garage playing and singing, and he would just like go play the rhythm chords behind him and just start doing that. And then he's like, before you know it, there's 8 or 9 people in my garage at night all singing bluegrass and all that kind of stuff. And it was just really cool to hear his whole story about how he became, essentially the stuff he would do to become as good as he was. I mean, it's those same types of stories where he, you're just like, those guys become consumed by the craft, and he just, and like that's part of it, but then also just, the natural ability that he has is part of it as well. But yeah, dude, it was a really kind of fascinating interview telling his story, because he had like, dude, I have so many of the similar stories. I was telling my mom this because like he told this story where his dad used to call him Boomer, and he'd be like, Boomer, get in here. And he'd be thinking to himself like, oh shit, what did I do? Type of a thing, and he would like go in there and thinking he's about to get ripped a new one. And his dad would be like, sit down. And then he just put on a record. He was like, listen to this record right now. And just infuse him with all kinds of music and get him just like loving different kinds of music. And he tells a really hilarious story about the first time he ever listened to Black Sabbath, and played the first Black Sabbath album for me, played that first song on where it starts with the storm sounds and the rain, and then just like that down type of, and he's just like, dude, it was like the most terrifying experience of my life up to that point. I'm like 7 or 8 years old. Like, dude, there's so many stories like that where you're just like, my mom would play something and it's like, it was always Ed Van Halen or something, like, listen to what he does right here. And I'm just like, blew my mind as a child. Like, how does someone even do this type of thing? Dude, it was great. Like, and like I said, dude, I've just been like nonstop. Like what you do with Sturgill, when you just put him on and you just listen to him for a whole day without stopping, like that's just where I've been with Billy for like the last month. I just can't get enough.
Yeah. Well, dude, when you sent me that message, you was like, I've been so consumed by Billy Strings. I was like, I said, what do you do? And he's just awesome. And I was like, oh, you were confused for Billy Strings. No, but
well, that too, man. Like you listen to him, you're like, what the hell?
Yeah. But I mean, it's like, he's such like you said it best. He's just like a guy that you would literally be at a college party and he would just be there and he would be awesome at guitar. Like he doesn't seem to have changed. He doesn't seem to have changed at all. He doesn't seem to be pretentious or anything like that. Like he just seems to be getting along with everybody. And I mean, you look at some of the musical royalty that's wanting to play alongside of him, that says everything too,
Seriously. Did you see that? It's a video that was going around for a while. I'm sure you've probably seen it, but it was like years, like short hair, cropped up, comb over Billy stage of stuff. And it's him like downstairs at this big house party when he played Dust in a Baggie for the first time.
Yeah.
And they're like, the story goes like, they're all just totally baked on mushrooms like that whole time down there. and he just starts ripping it, and like everybody literally can't believe what they're hearing because they're like, play that new one you're working on, and he's like, which one? And he like just starts ripping it, and then that became like one of his biggest songs he ever did. But like that
Oh
video is
yeah,
so good.
the dude in the background. It's just like he's just
Oh, he's
vibing.
going at it.
He's
he
just
was
vibing.
doing his little foot stomping jig in the background on the carpet. Like he was getting
Yeah.
into it.
Have you
Yes.
you been listening to anybody else, like anybody else captured your interest lately?
Yeah, so the other one that was and I think I sent them to you too, but because the week after that Outlaw Fest, we got tickets for Black Keys,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
which is like that's my wife's like number one all-time band, right? And we haven't seen them. We saw them last time at Key Arena. I don't even think it's called Key Arena anymore, in Seattle. And
yeah,
that was right after Brothers came out. So this was like 13 or something like that. It was before the one that came
yeah,
out right after that. So it's basically still the Brothers tour. And we literally like flew there, got the cheapest seats we could find. We were literally like touching the wall on the top row. So, like we could not have been farther away. Like they're 2 inches tall for where we're sitting, right? And it was still just killer
yeah.
concert. But the guys that are opening up for them at this concert in a couple of months, and now I can't even remember the name of the guys, but it's like a Spanish name, I think. But I had sent them to you, and you said you'd seen
Hermanos
them.
Gutierrez.
What's that?
Hermanos Gutierrez.
Yes. And
Yeah,
like because I'd sent them to you, and you said you'd seen them, and they're opening
yeah,
for the Keys, and like that's other than Billy, like Molly plays that stuff around here because it's just like a lot of it is even instrumental type stuff that he
yeah,
plays, and so it's just like good music to have on all the time. But those guys are killer, and they're opening for him, so I was super pumped once we started getting into
yeah,
them.
yeah. I'd like to get back into some shows, man. It's just one, it's like like Zach Bryan, for example. I like the guy. I'm not fanatical about him. So it's like, am I willing to pay 200-300 bucks to see a dude I'm not fanatical about?
Seriously,
Probably not.
seriously,
Like it's just kind of
yeah.
gotten out of hand. Some of the pricing just got so crazy.
Well, even when Tyler came, he came last July, and he played at the big Idaho Center Arena here in town, which is where the Outlaw Fest is. But like the even just GA ticks for him were like $180, like the cheapest
Yeah,
ones. And I'm
yeah,
like, man, like if this was, not to say I don't still like the stuff he's been doing the last few years, but like if this was 4 or 5 years ago, Tyler, I would have paid that in a heartbeat. You know what I mean?
right.
So,
Yeah,
and I think I was just like, and that was kind of where we were with the Black Keys for a while, honestly, because it's like all they were doing with these huge arena shows that were a couple $100s at a time. And so that was kind of like the joke of when we found out they were playing here again in May. Like literally the day before I had found the tickets, we were driving back to our place. We were on the freeway, and I was telling Molly, I was like, you know what? We were listening to him. I'm like, we'll just catch. She's like, do you think we'll ever see him again? And I was like, yeah, we'll just wait until like they're the old guys that are playing smaller venues again, type of a thing, and they're doing that kind of tour. And I was like, they'll probably just come back and play the Botanical Gardens or something like that. And Molly laughs, and she literally goes, the Black Keys are not the band that are going to play Botanical Garden. Like that's just not their vibe. And then literally the next day, like I saw that they're playing, and they're playing at the Botanical Gardens, and I'm like, we're going.
but yeah. No, they're a good show. I saw them. I guess it would have been probably it's right around that same time, 13, 14.
Yeah,
They put on a hell of a show.
yeah, dude, they're awesome live. And
Yeah.
Dan is one of those guys where he'll go, and Dan Auerbach will like all the other things that he produces is all
Oh yeah.
awesome too. Like he works with all kinds of bands and does stuff, and it all kind of, I mean, doesn't all sound like the Black Keys, but you can tell that Dan's fingers were involved
Yeah.
in like the production of a lot of these things. So I mean, like all those guys, both of those guys are just like crazy, crazy talented for
Yeah.
everything that they do.
Yeah. I really like them on Rogan. They seem again like just very
Yeah.
normal dudes, just
And
approachable
they're
dudes.
normal, and they're kind of just weird at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
type of content that they put out for stuff, like you could tell it's just like, dude, where's the weirdest place we can take this to have fun, and we'll just do that. Because like that's a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff that they put out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, man. I'm kind of like you with Tyler stuff. Like, still obviously wildly support and root for that guy to do well. Um, I just feel like some of his music was such an exodus from some of his stuff, and then obviously the labels get involved and they over polish the shit out of everything. Like, I kind of have wondered myself if a lot of this was like, hey, we'll sign up for 3 records your way. We'll kind of do
Yeah.
what you want, follow a path. And then after
Yep.
that, I can do whatever I want. And again, Tyler's very, very smart and he's very, very calculated and patient. And I feel like just about every choice he's made and the way he's done it has one kept him true to his friends. Like the people that were opening up for him 10 years ago are still opening for him now,
Yep.
kind of thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's got some just old holler bangers written and waiting to go. He wanted to
For
do some
sure.
other stuff first, but time will tell. And again, it kind of puts me in that category of why don't you sing more of your old stuff? And like they're the
Yeah.
same artist they're just on a different evolution than I am. And
Totally.
I've eaten crow for that before, like where a band kind of exceeded my breadth of ability to listen to them because they evolved somehow. And then you go
Yep.
back 5 or 6 years later, and you hear that album, and it's like, holy shit, how did I not rock this out? But it's like sometimes you're just a little bit slower than the artist is, you know?
Yeah. And part of it too, like the analogy that I can make to it, there's a couple of guys that I kind of think fit this analogy, but it's like the Chris Farley analogy where maybe he's not the best one, but maybe like Jonah Hill's better because it's like in comedy, like so much of why Farley and Jonah Hill were like hilarious was like they were the huge fat guys that did.
Yeah,
So it's like, dude, I want them to be healthy so they live a long time and continue to do stuff. But like, do you lose part of that by becoming healthy and like not being the funny fat guy type of thing? So I think like with Tyler's case, and there's a ton of artists that are like this too, that kind of go one or two ways. Like once they get clean and
yeah,
like get away from like the lifestyle stuff from early on when people loved all that stuff, like you don't know if that was necessarily like part of what made some of that other stuff really good in the past. So it's like, dude, I don't want him to die early because of like drugs and all this other stuff. So like I want him to be clean and healthy, but it's like, did that play a part as like why? And it obviously does. Right. So it's like
right.
there's the parts of it where it's like preference and them growing and all this kind of stuff. Like you said, you're just sometimes not as caught up to where they are with a lot of that stuff for a while.
Yeah. Well, and again, like I said, he's a different kind of dude cut from his own cloth.
Yeah.
And I really think he is truly an artist. I think he's going to take on one of those, almost like a Robert Earl Keen
Yeah.
type character, just a guy that plays like a Jimmy Buffett. Like
Yep.
he's going to have his diehards forever.
Yep.
He's going to put out a few songs that make the radio here and there, but like he's going to build his thing. And I think to me, that's a cool thing too. Like,
Totally. When you look at
I'm
like
open
as
for
far as like
whatever.
even with the drug aspect of it, like guys like Stevie Ray, right? Like those last few years before he died, when he was actually clean, and you go and watch like some of those live performances, like dude was never more locked in than those last couple of years, and
Yeah.
being clean helped him with a lot of that stuff, obviously, because there
Yeah.
was those times, those few years prior to that where like he would still go up and rip, but like dude was barely there in his head. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so
Yeah.
like I'm hoping like that's kind of the case too, where it's like, there's so many there's so many pieces of music from 60s and 70s that like literally would not have been created had it not been for just copious drug usage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
Well, I mean, you want to go even into our generation a little bit. You talk about the Alice in Chains, Lane Staley. You talk
oh
about
yeah.
Kurt Cobain, Nirvana. You talk about uh, Cornell,
Yep.
Soundgarden. I mean, all of these guys impacted by drug use and taking a perspective on the world, dude, that a lot of people connected with. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
probably most of those aren't drug users, but it's
Yeah.
kind of one of those things. Are the drugs a translator from sad to sad, like from sad human to sad human? Do the drugs help them process the words?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Lane
Yeah.
Staley talked about that. I mean, he was like, they want me to write better music, and the music's in the heroin. Like
Yeah. And then
there
you
you
go look
go.
at all of those singers from the 90s, except for Ed Vedder, are dead. like,
Yeah,
like literally, I mean, like Lane and Kurt and Chris and Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots, like all those dudes, just tragic endings because of like,
yeah,
I mean, just the heavy reliance on a lot of that stuff.
yeah. It would be hard. I mean, could you imagine where at the peak of your stuff, like let's say all those guys had decade-long runs, where I'm sure they were catered to hand and foot, beer and drug. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and then one day you look around and it's like, well, shit, I'm not. You're in different stages of pain and excitement. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yep.
you wonder if they get back to touring and it's like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm still doing this. Where are the drugs now? And it's like,
Seriously.
you know, I don't
The
know.
only
It's really strange.
The only one of them, and it's like a bummer, but it's just part of, I wasn't old enough, obviously, yet to see them like in the heyday type of thing. But the only one of those guys that I actually ended up seeing was Scott Weiland, and it was when he was with Velvet Revolver.
Yeah,
And so I saw them like 2004 or 5. I was literally like, I was in middle school, and dude,
yeah.
he's electric on stage. Like he is
Oh yeah,
unreal. Like he is like the Mick Jagger type of personality of that whole generation of guys. He was so fun to see.
yeah. Well, it's super talented. I really liked Velvet Revolver. I liked what they were about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought they had a really cool chance to do something cool. I mean, they did, but like beyond that.
Kind of just fizzled out after those two albums basically, but
Yeah,
we're dude, well, we're running right up on an hour, so let's just call it
perfect.
here for today. We'll
We'll be
do
back next week. We also got some other ideas for the paid section of things too, to doing
yeah,
some more weekly stuff. We might crack into that on the next episode, but we'll do it next week.
sounds good. All right, thank you guys.
Stay safe. Thanks.